We are live. Welcome everybody to the Carl Vibe Show and podcast. Thank you if you're joining us on YouTube or on any of the other platforms. You can find us now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on all of the different favorite podcast platforms. We also have a Facebook page, a Patreon, and all that good stuff. So make sure and check it out. I'm really excited tonight. Have a special guest that I was able to meet recently up at Phenomicon in person, but our schedules have been so busy. We've been trying to finally connect. And it's funny how we've come full circle because we actually kind of grew up really close to one another in Southeast Idaho. He's a former Marine for the U.S. military and now current security guard and paranormal researcher and investigator at the one and only Legendary Skinwalker Ranch. Welcome everybody to the show, Kaleb Bench. How are you doing, Kaleb?
Great. How are you doing, Carl?
How smooth was that intro? That was one of the best introductions I've ever done, I think.
That was awesome.
But it just speaks to volumes to how good of a guy you are. Every time I've encountered you and everybody on the show, such a good crew there at Skinwalker Ranch. I'm jealous that you get to work there every day and do what you do. And as much as people are terrified at that location, the camaraderie and the friendship and the fellowship that I was able to witness there among you guys at Phenomicon was really something that I admire. And I wanted to convey that right off the bat is how much you guys are on television doing this crazy stuff. But at the end of the day, some of the nicest people that I've ever met in this community, normal, everyday people. So,
thank you so much for that. And I'm happy that you're really hitting on that because that is something that I don't think a lot of people really understand. Like obviously in the show, you're seeing this, this conflict kind of between like say Dragon and, and Travis, especially in that first season. Right. But
right.
You're also like people are missing so much of this interaction between us on as a team, and we all come from so much from different backgrounds, and you're hitting it right on the head. We're just normal guys, and well, maybe not Travis and
right.
and Eric. They're both so out there. They're so brilliant. They're so cool to be around, and these conversations that I'm able to have with them, and I'm learning so much from them. But we do have such a tight-knit brotherhood there, and it's we're witnessing and going through stuff that's kind of building that, and it kind of goes back to I see that it's one reason why I kind of went in law enforcement was that military brotherhood that I had with my fellow Marines. We miss that. That's that's the fun part of the Marine Corps is that brotherhood, and you get that in law enforcement, and you get that same kind of level of individual there. And I'm seeing that on the team at the ranch too. And I'm so humbled and blessed to be a part of it. So
I think it seems like something that you'd have to have in place working in an environment like that, not only just for the basic reason that there are security issues that a lot of people that try to sneak onto the property and there are dangerous things that can occur and stuff, but knowing the history of the location and the paranormal activity, UFO stuff and cattle mutilations, like knowing that you have people there that you can trust that are going to have your back in those situations is, I think, a really big deal. If you're going to walk into a homestead too, you want to make sure the people outside are walking in there with you understand who you are and you can feel confident with who you're going in there for sure.
Oh yeah. And we all have our families. We're just, you kind of hit it there where we are kind of normal, we've, and I guess the way I'd like to bring that in or explain that is, in the military, this is where I really learned this is you can take anybody from any background who has the drive and a good mind and a good physical, you can get these guys from all these different backgrounds and throw them into these positions and they rise or fall. And generally in these circumstances, you see a lot of guys rise to that occasion. And it's really cool seeing people do that. And that also taught me that you can put anybody into a position and with the right training and with the right teacher, they'll excel at what they're interested in. And and it's kind of sad. You see kind of this attitude in, in life where people are putting things on pedestals that shouldn't be. There's
Right.
a lot of cool things out there that hobbyists are doing better than, say, the professional. And well, yeah, so you can go down this rabbit hole, and banter back and forth. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I've seen some amazing things coming from fans who, I can think of like some Star Wars fan projects that I've seen that are out of this world and
Yeah.
better than some things that I've seen from professional studios.
Right.
And you see that passion and that love reflected in that, and that's where it's cool. Just you kind of see these different people rising to the occasion for things.
Yeah, that's what's amazing about you guys and the team there. It seems like every individual of you are each so like kind of humble in your own respect and regard, and that
Mhm.
makes you lean on each other in kind of a really cool way. But at the same time, each of you comes from a unique expertise or an upbringing or background that you bring to the
Mhm.
table that almost seems like a superhero squad brought together, a special like skill set that's like really cool. So like, because I can tell even you, Caleb, you're on security and you work with
Mhm.
Dragon, so you're walking around with like the firearms and the shotguns and everything, doing the security checks and going up
Mhm.
and talking to people. But I know just from my interactions with you that behind that surface, you're in your heart, you're a deeply spiritual guy, and you
Mhm.
the phenomenon and the connection to your personal faith is real to you, and this is
Yeah.
something that you take serious. And so when you're walking out there through the dark, it's no joke to you. This is something that's on the edge of some of the most important questions of our time and of
Yeah.
reality and of our faith and everything. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit. What is it about how you found yourself in this position that maybe seems like too coincidental or synchronistic? Like maybe you caused it to happen in some crazy miracle way.
Yeah, there's a lot of things we could go into with that, and I'll try and do my best about hitting as much as I can, and giving you as much, I guess, from where I'm coming from and things like that. And I guess this is something where I guess a lot of this is obviously world of Caleb. I'm seeing things in a way because based on my experiences and things like that. And this is what's cool about being on this team is a lot of us do have similar backgrounds in some areas, and we have some very strong beliefs that are very close together, and we're able to lean on each other when something happens. And we've kind of talked about this before, where there's five of us out there, and then when we're having an experience or something happens, and we have five different perspectives of what happened there, and we're
Hmm.
able to bring those together. And a lot of times, based because of their background, like Travis and Eric specifically, they have a lot of information based on the different areas of research that they've delved into and worked in. And so it's pretty cool seeing Tom and Bryant and myself sometimes almost surprising them with our perspectives on things, and the things that we're and the connections that we're able to make. And and coming from my background, you kind of mentioned that you've seen me on another program with one of your other friends, Vinny, and
Hmm.
I've kind of hit some of this on his show. I mentioned that one of the big turning points in my life was when my dad passed away. At that point, I was kind of in the party realm, if you will, and I had made a lot of really good friends in that realm. I was doing the Marine thing. I was in school. I was doing rugby. I was in a fraternity. I was in this realm, you know, but I really didn't have this specific direction in my life, right? And when my dad passed away, I was 24. He was 45, and I didn't have the greatest relationship with him. And so that was something that really hit me hard because you never think that you think your dad's going to be there for until you're an old man, and he's even older. And so my dad left very early, considering.
Right.
So that led me down to have a lot of self-reflection, and I'm really grateful for a lot of people that were in my life at that point. And I'm have nothing but love for those people. And I try and stay in contact with as many people as I can, but obviously life is what it is. But this started me down this path, and I started getting into some different information and some different things in life, right? And I started learning from people who I think are really onto the path of real knowledge and this, because I went to college expecting to tap into this wealth of knowledge, if you will. And when I got there, that's not what I found. It was I felt it was almost, I don't know a good word for it.
More like shoves you further into the maze in a way.
Yeah, you weren't. I wasn't. You don't go there and to find the answers. Almost, if you don't know and have your specific direction, college is a really dangerous place because you're going to get pulled in 1,000 different directions, especially in today's world.
Right.
And so it took me kind of stepping back and kind of opening my eyes a little bit and kind of delving into other things, and I started studying information from guys like Bob Proctor and Jim Rohn, and Tony Robbins, these big name characters who are doing some amazing things in their life, and they're helping millions of people. And I start going down this path, and I start doing a lot of self-reflection. And then I also find faith again, if you will, in the higher power that I choose to follow. And I started having some very powerful experiences there within a year of my dad passing away. And that kind of set me down this new path. And that was 2013. And here I am 7, 8 years later. And because I believe I've been following certain laws and certain natural laws and certain ways of thinking, for whatever reason, I'm the guy that's lucky enough to be extended the opportunity to become a security guard on Skinwalker Ranch. And immediately within a couple months, I'm having these crazy experiences out on this piece of property where I've talked to people who've visited there and been in groups who have had people who have had connections to the ranch for decades, and they've never experienced anything. And I have a notebook full of just experiences that I've had, and I've kind of been documenting everything that I've had happen since I've been there these last 5 years. And I have 6, 7 pages of like 2 sentences where I just wrote the big point and maybe an impression or something, and then on top of like the video diaries and things that I've been doing, and so and I guess one of the big experiences that I shared on this other show actually just did that today, because I feel very prompted, or I feel like I need to get this out there a little bit, is we had this experience a couple years ago where we had some satanic or devil worshiping individuals come out to the ranch, and we missed them because Tom and I had heard that we were going to have some people trying to come onto the ranch, and they were going to try and come on at night. And so Tom and I spent, we'd get out there at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and we'd stay there till 7 in the morning, 7, 8 in the morning, so we're out there for, 12, 14 hours, and we go home, and I come back before Tom gets there, and I find our gate's been destroyed. And I start tracking these people who went up on the canal bank, and I'm tracking them, and there's these little footprints, and that was really weird stuff. But the thing that stuck out to me during this experience, and I think this is where you'll find this really interesting, is that feeling, like that vibration, the frequency, whatever you want to call it, on the ranch at that time was very dark. It was very heavy, just, for lack of a better word, evil. And that's the thing, is the ranch, the longer you spend time there, it's very, it amplifies, if you will. This is something that we've talked about, is it amplifies those emotions. It amplifies this, whatever you want to call it, cognitive connection or your emotional state or whatnot. So you have to be very careful. At least this is my belief, is we have to be very careful when we go out there and we're doing anything. So I'm very respectful to the ranch. And I choose to go through my protocols based in my faith before I go out there and when I leave, because of experiences that I've had, like the one I'm talking about now. And so we're out there, and Tom and I both have, when he gets there, because I called him immediately, I was like, dude, we're having an issue. He was right behind me, like 20 minutes behind me anyways. So we get out there and we go out there, and both of us, the word that kept coming into our mind was violation. The ranch had been violated. It did not want whatever had been done, and it didn't ask for it, didn't want it. And so we could literally feel those two powers of, for lack of a better word, good and evil, just going to town all around us. It was one of the craziest surreal experiences I've ever had. And now fast forward a little bit to when I'm more heavily involved with law enforcement, especially this last year since 2021 started. Law enforcement, we've been having a massive uptick in suicides. And this is one of the things that really struck me this year, is going on these suicides. That same evil, that same darkness, that same heaviness is present at these scenes that I felt that night on the ranch. And that was one of the most powerful things for me specifically this last year, when I really made that connection, because you get caught up in stuff and you forget about, you don't forget about it. You're just not putting that same time and effort into paying attention to things that you've gone through, or it's on the back of your mind. You just haven't thought about it. But when I made that connection this year, I've really been put a lot of thought into it, and it's just shown that I had to go to those sources of light and good to get through those, especially these last couple months, and then really, and it's really neat because I could go to the ranch, and it's almost like it helps,
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things and that's, again, like you hit, why I take my job so serious, because the ranch, the longer you're there and you talk to the team about this, like we've all said this, the longer we're there, the more we're convinced that we're dealing with some kind of intelligence, whether that's whatever you want to call that, a spirit, interdimensional being, whatever you want to call it. There's this intelligence there. And I feel like for whatever reason, I've been able to build a positive relationship with what's there, and so I take it very serious about, the ranch isn't this place that you'd come out here and do whatever you want so you can have an experience,
Right.
And I know this is kind of a difficult thing that you delve into, because how can you quantify some of this,
Yeah. Well, from the outside looking at it, it looks like, I don't see any coincidences. So even when I look at the team, I'm like, the fact that Brandon is the owner of the ranch, that you're there, that, that Dragon's there as security, that everybody on the team and the connection to all of it plays a role and plays a part in the story. And it's no coincidence, like I said, that you guys who are walking around to keep the peace as security are deeply spiritual individuals that are in tune with the energy of the ranch itself at a certain level, and in tune with your own spiritual connection with yourself and a higher power. I mean, it could be anybody that could have, bought the ranch and taken over this kind of research to try and bring this sort of information out to the world. But it seems like not such a coincidence that you guys are there to be able to treat it almost like I don't want to use the word sacred, but with a nature like this is a sacred topic or an important issue, and whatever phenomenon is going on here, it's almost like it's not evil, but it pushes back or has a reflex to almost like bullying or aggressive behavior, almost like the people working on the ranch would in a certain way. If somebody goes on and violates, you guys almost support the ranch in making sure and preserving it. So it's almost like supportive of you, unless you guys get poking around too a little bit too much. It's really interesting.
And that's where we try and be respectful as much as we can, but we are also trying to find those answers, of what's going on. And it's one of those things that you can't help but poke the bear, if you will, or kick the hornet's nest, like Travis says, because people ask us, well, how are you trying to communicate, if you will, or and we've been getting a lot of those questions, and it's like, okay, how do we communicate? What are we doing to communicate? And this is something where we ourselves have this conversation about, like, are we, with our own minds, through some of the stuff that science is coming out with in the last year specifically, are we creating what we're seeing out here with our minds, kind of thing? And I know that sounds crazy and that's out there, but that's a conversation that's been had, between the team, because you start getting into this realm of quantum mechanics and like manifestation and these different modalities, if you will. And we're always asked if we're bringing these different groups out to see what we can have happen, But and in regards to the show and what we're doing is we're trying to keep it as scientific as we can. And that's the goal, is to show through the scientific method. Every time we shoot a rocket, this is an experiment of, every time we shoot a rocket, are we getting some kind of response, which happens to be yes, for whatever reason. And so we're trying to modify that specific experiment to get different answers, which really just turn into more questions.
Right.
And so, yeah, we're always trying to figure this out. And it, one of my favorite memories is, you have Travis out there, and his attitude when he first came out here was, we're all a bunch of crazy hillbillies, and which is kind of funny coming from
Travis.
Because he grew up in backwoods Alabama, and has
he's all Leonard Skinner.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting here going, really? Like,
Right.
And within a month, he's out there with holding these pieces of equipment, and he's just like lose it. And he's like, I don't know. He's losing his mind, and he just throws those two pieces of equipment. He's like, I can't figure this out. This should not be happening. And he goes and collects himself. But it's like one of the funniest and one of my favorite memories, and I think that's also hitting on that note, like, I think Brandon is absolutely correct on, we have this paranormal activity. We have all this stuff happening here, and we're trying to bring an open investigation with these two incredible scientists whose livelihoods are on the line, and the reputations, and they're willing to delve into this when for the last 50 years, there's been this massive stigmatism into any of this in any realm connected to UAPs or UFOs or any of this. And so I think that's what people need to, really, I would hope they would gain that appreciation of seeing the level of individual that's really paying attention here. And they're publicly coming out and doing stuff, and same thing with, like, as law enforcement, my word is my job. Right. In that realm, I'm talk about being nervous when you're going up and testifying, and you're taking somebody's rights and putting them in jail. That's nerve-wracking. How can that not affect people? Like, that's very serious. Right. And so we have these different backgrounds and these different expertises all coming together on for whatever reason on this ranch, and we're trying to be as honest and show we're having these crazy things happen, and we're trying to find out why.
Yeah, and this is something that I hope that people understand when they go and watch the shows, how much the production planning and process just chews up the entire experience in a certain way. For example, like, if you're on a filming day on the film set, there's a specific, like, okay, today we're going to go do this experiment, and we're going to get the whole crew ready and film it. And sometimes, like, you have to reset up to get the shot of the Jeep driving down the road and all of that stuff to set up. And so that consumes all this time. And then the actual experiment itself, you've got the cameras there and in your face and all that. 99% of the rest of the time, when that's not going on, there's still a lot of personal, individual experiences, patrol walks, things that happen and get seen. And not only that, it doesn't necessarily stay contained on the ranch. It might even affect families back home and all sorts of things. And that never makes it in the show.
Yeah, Tom actually went through and did the math, and I think I mentioned this at Phenomicon and on some other areas too. Is Tom literally did the math where you guys in the TV show are literally seeing less than 1% of the total film footage, and you're hitting so many areas there, and you're so right. We all have families, and they're all being affected by this, whether it's because like myself, I have 3 little ones that are underneath the age of 6. And that period in their life, they need so much interaction with dad and mom. Yeah, and it's so vital for their development. And yet I'm spending so much time away from them, especially during the filming periods, because the filming schedule is so crazy. And that's just my family. And then on top of that, my wife and I have had crazy experiences that I know are from the ranch, something following me home, if you will. And I'm not the only one, and that's where those guys' stories to tell and bring to light. That's, but I can tell you that other guys on the team specifically have had and do have continued experiences off the ranch that are connected to it. Mm-hmm. And then there's other individuals that have connections to the ranch that will never come back to the ranch because of these kinds of experiences that they've had and continue to have.
Right.
And then, on the filming side of things, we are trying to, because, there's those criticisms out there that it's just a TV show.
Right.
Eric has been out there nonstop, essentially since 2016, doing experiment after experiment and thinking about this and delving into different things and trying to figure this out. And he's just always, it seems like 10 steps ahead of where some of us are. We have something happen and you look over and Eric has this little gleam in his eye, because he's almost already got there, and he wants other people to get there. And he kind of nudges us that way. And that's what I love about Eric, is he's such a natural born teacher and he loves watching other people learn.
Totally.
Like we have all these different things going on. But I can tell you that the science is very serious. Like Eric and Travis take this very seriously. And Brandon wants to get this story out there. He wants this information out there in an honest way.
Yeah.
But we do have to be careful about certain things because, certain information could make people go crazy, I think. And we do have to be careful about stuff just because there are people who can't get out of their little box, and anything outside of it. And you see this in so many other areas where you bring in any kind of new information and people just don't want to hear it or can't hear it, because they can't get outside their little perceived safety zone, if you will. And you hit it again with filming. We have 2 groups who are trying to get their end goal, and they're having to come to some kind of accommodation with each other because, like with, like you said, and you're familiar with sounds like with film process is we're going out there to try and do an experiment, but we're trying to catch as much of that as we can live.
Right.
They still have to get different shots. Say the camera team, they have to get their different shots. They want, and they want to make it look good. They want us to look good. And they want to have something visual for the audience to see and really make that connection. So, one of the greatest examples I think is the Tesla coil. We get this massive Tesla coil out there and it's shooting lightning all over the place. And we're taking it out there to see if we can, again, poke the bear, if you will, and see if there's something going on underneath the ground. And so we're shooting all this electricity into the ground and it looks amazing. And we are finding out stuff and we are getting new information and new data, and we're trying to get that out to the people in as clean of a way as we can. But at the same time, we're making a TV show,
Yeah.
So there is that conflict there, but at the same time, the 2 groups are trying to do what they can as the best way they can and the best way they know how.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes people don't understand that there are partnerships involved with the crews that come out there to do the equipment. Yep. There's arrangements for them to be there and certain amount of screen time and different things sometimes. And that affects the course of the day. So you're in the middle of conducting a really cool experiment and getting results. And then you get pulled off to the side and somebody's like, can you kind of recap in a few words what just happened? And you're like totally pulled out of the moment a little bit to deal with that. But off camera, there's all sorts of stuff, like you mentioned, even things that might even follow you home. Do you mind, telling us any of those experiences that aren't too personal for you?
So my first real big one was I was actually coming home during the first, this was a filming of the first season. So this is a couple of years ago. And we had a guest out who talked about having things happen at his house. And I'd heard other stories from Tom and some of the other team members. And Tom's been pretty vocal about things happening at his house as well. But I'm driving home and I get a text from my wife, hey, when are you going to be home? And I'm like, probably 30 seconds from my house at this point. And so I don't really answer back. I'm like, I'm going to be home in like 30 seconds. So I pull in my driveway. I walk inside my house. I lock the door behind me. That time of night, at this point, we only had the 2 kids and they're both upstairs sleeping. And I see my wife walk into our bedroom out of our kitchen. And she doesn't say anything to me or anything. And she just goes into her bedroom and just sits down. And I go walk into our kitchen and I hear this. We had this loft where we were living. And I heard these footsteps go running across my loft. And I'm like, who the heck's upstairs with my kids? And so I go running up there and military dad comes out and I'm ready for a fight, and I go through and I clear my house. I clear my rooms, my kids' rooms. I clear everywhere inside my house. I don't find anything or anybody. And I go outside and there's no one there, and I'm sitting there going, what the heck? Okay, whatever. That was just weird. And I go walk inside, lock my doors. My wife's still in her bedroom. And I walk back inside and it happens again. I hear this stomping across that loft, which was above our kitchen. And I'm going, what the crap? And it hits me, something followed me from the ranch. And
the hitchhiker phenomenon, they call it.
The hitchhiker phenomenon. And so I go through and I turn to my, for lack of a better word, my spiritual high power. And I go through some of my processes. And I basically tell it, dude, like, this is my house. You gotta go home. You gotta go back to the ranch. We'll
right.
Hope me there. Haunt me there. That's fine, but please not here. And I go in and I'm like, and I ask my wife, and I tell her what happened. She says, yeah, it's been happening for the last hour. And I'm like, why didn't you call me sooner?
Yeah.
I'm like, what the heck?
Right.
And that was my first experience. And I've had multiple experiences very similar to that, where my little boys told me stuff that doesn't make me very happy. And it is creepy.
As a dad, that's creepy, Jeff says.
It's and so like the one night pretty recently, both my wife and I, we were up and we could hear something on the roof, like moving around, like signs, like it was just scratching weird, and you could it was just weird. And just things like that. And then another one very similar to that experience with me and my wife. My wife was home and she calls me and tells me what's going on. And she's like, I'm not freaking out yet, but I can hear it. Like, I can hear the weight shifting. I can hear something there. And then she said 30 minutes later, my little boy came in and described the exact same thing above in that upstairs bedroom where he was at. He could hear it. And the house that we were living in at the time, the ceilings are steep. It was like for every foot you go, you're going up 16 inches. It was very steep. And we had like the metal corrugated style roofing. So it was very slick. So there's no one wanting to go up there and walk around like that. So just, we've had things happen like that. And, I have a brand new cell phone. I got a new phone 5-6 weeks ago, and I've already had some crazy stuff happening with that.
With the new one now. So the one that's it doesn't have a cracked screen. You've got a new phone.
I got the new phone.
Is the phenomenon still passing your your security and everything and scanning around, or?
I have not had that experience yet. And I think it's only a matter of time. But I've had other things happening with my cell phone that were occurring towards the beginning of when things were happening with my other phone. So, because you got to remember, like I had that phone for 3 or 4 years when I was on the ranch.
Yeah.
And kind of looking back, there were things at the beginning that I was like, oh, whatever, the phone's just doing weird stuff. But looking back, I'm like, I'm seeing that same pattern now with the new phone. And so I think it's only a matter of time before I see that again. And
it's finding its way in there, figuring
Yeah.
out your new password.
yeah, pretty much.
Right.
You know, and you know, I know it's been a big thing, like a crack screen. We did a lot of research, like Eric and I and Travis, we did a lot of research into what would make a phone do what we were seeing mine, but no one's ever been able to show us that you could go past a passcode just because of the cracked screen. Because if that's all it took, I can tell you there'd be a lot more investigations on the law enforcement side that would be solved right now. Because and I've had multiple detectives, not only the ones I work with, but other ones reach out to me and tell me, dude, like, we know you cannot do that with the cell phone, especially with an iPhone like that. Like, there's that's impossible. And you know, and Travis and Casey both say that. You know, what you guys were seeing with my phone in the rocket episode and when we were digging, that was all real time.
Yeah.
Casey was standing next to me and my phone started playing one of the podcasts that I was listening to at that time. And we both looked at each other like, are you hearing that? And we were both like, where's that coming from? And we started like both feeling, and I pull out my phone, and that's when my phone is like dialing 911 while it's listening to this podcast, you know, just all sorts of weird operation stuff that shouldn't be happening at the same time.
Right.
You know, and then you guys are seeing it on, you know, real time as we were filming it. And, you know, and then again, also on top of that, that's not my, not only my phone is doing that, like Tom has had multiple phones fried to where they're dead. Like there's no turning them back on.
Really?
Travis has had things happen with his phone. And it's one of the cool things is we have people come on and within a week they're experiencing the exact same stuff with their cell phones that I was experiencing. So
yeah,
it's crazy.
Well, Kaleb, I was just up there, you know, for Phenomicon, and I got the itch, and it's kind of like what I do as a YouTuber. So I was like, all right, I got to go by. I know I can't go on to Skinwalker Ranch, but I did pay attention during the bus tour. Yeah. I was taking screenshots of where the roads were. And so I did go back at night. I don't know. I did upload a video about it, but so I'll kind of tell you what happened to me, and you can tell me if this is familiar, but it was my only time there, you know, and I'm being really objective. I'm not faking anything, but I did take a RIM pod, like a ghost hunting pod with an antenna that just senses like anything getting close to it. It starts to set off an alarm kind of a thing. And I had a night vision camera. I had like a radio scanning, like a ghost voice chat thing, like you see on TV, a black light flashlight, a regular flashlight, and then my camera. Anyway, and I got there, and long story short, I get there and I'm like, man, I forgot all my equipment. Like I'm going through my backpack on the tailgate of the truck when I get ready to get started. I can't find my night vision camera. I can't find my radio. I can't find my flashlight. There's like 3 of my main pieces of equipment that are just not in the bag. I took everything out of the backpack. So I'm on the south side of Skinwalker Ranch. So I can see the blue light to the left and the main gates to the right over there on the east side, right? So I see the whole ridge out ahead of me under the moonlight and stuff. And so I'm going through you probably know right where I was parked on the corner.
Oh yeah, I know exactly where you were.
So I literally emptied everything out of my backpack and shook it upside down over the tailgate. And I was like, where the heck is all my gear? And I just thought maybe I got in a hurry and was checking batteries and forgot about it. Yeah. So then I'm left with just a black light flashlight and my phone basically to do it all. And I did see what I thought was a cow. Now, I don't know if there's cows over there on that side of the area.
There are cows sporadically throughout the area, yes.
So this is what's weird, though, is that I thought that there was a cow to my right walking along the fence line. And then I got that like this weird feeling like something's not right, because I realized I couldn't hear anything. It wasn't quite the shape of a cow. It was just like a shadow figure, like this dark shape moving along the fence line like a shadow. And it gets right similar stories. It gets right squared up with me where I thought there was a gate, but it was just 2 posts, like railroad ties closer
Mhm.
together, you know, and it just turned and squatted down really fast. And I thought it was like just a cow like laying down, but I've been around cows and I'm like, okay, this is weird by
Yeah.
itself over there, and it's going to lay down in front of me. Like, so I walked up with the black light, and not only was there not like a bush there, but there wasn't anything there at all. And then I got
Mhm.
really weirded out. And the next morning, I go through my backpack. My night vision camera's right where I set it. My radio, my flashlight was all in the bag. And somehow it was like I was blind to it. I couldn't find it. It wasn't,
Yeah.
I don't know. I cannot
Um,
explain that.
I
And
can
it
I
was
can
super
tell you
weird.
that there are many people who have had these experiences where and team and even within our team, uh, we've had experiences where we know we've had something, or we put it somewhere specifically and we come back and it's not there,
Yeah.
or like people have memories of doing things specifically with certain types of equipment like what you're talking about, but they can't find the piece of equipment or whatever, you know. And so, yeah, what you're talking about is something that we have had and some team members have experienced on the ranch at different times.
Hmm.
And it makes me think of some of the narratives that we've inherited from the past where tools, which are big, heavy pieces of equipment, you know, anywhere from 50 to 100 pounds, and they're up in a tree.
Yeah.
And when they were left on the ground, they come back a day later and it's in a tree. You know, like we have inherited those stories, and you know, and most of the time we kind of go, okay, you know, that we're interested, but we're not going to sit there and we can't allow ourselves to like jump into it and be like, oh yeah, that's so cool. We
Right.
have to take that approach of, okay, how, you know, until we can really see that or quantify it or have that evidence of it, you know, we have to kind of slow down and we have to do the investigation the way we need to show that we're trying to do this, you know, the way we want to. But I can tell you that we have had those experiences. Some of our team members especially have had an experience like that.
Hmm.
And you know, that's their story. I don't want to rain on their parade,
Yeah.
you know, or, you know, they're the ones that experienced it. I just think it's best that when that comes out, that they're the ones telling it. But I can tell you that it shooks some of the guys. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, we've had things like that happen, and you know, and you're hitting it right there. You have weird things like that happen. You know, one of the examples is, you know we walk in and like say we'll put like a book or a pencil or something on the counter in the command center, and you know you put it there. You go and do something, and an hour later, and you're the only one out there, and you come back, and it's not there. It's complete somewhere else, and
Yeah.
you're like, okay, maybe I did put it somewhere else. Did I really put it there? But when that happens 100 times, you
Yeah.
know,
And I can say, Caleb, like the feeling that I got, it did not feel, this is just friend
yeah,
to friend. It did not feel like hostile. It didn't
mhm.
feel vindictive. It literally felt like, I don't know how to describe this, like a cousin or like a
Hi, I'm here. I
like a,
know you're here. Yeah,
yeah, and almost like a big brother that would come up if he was a ghost, would like, if he could pants you, he would like he has a sense of humor, but it's not
yeah.
like he's really just not up to anything negative or bad. But there's like I don't know, it's very
Yeah,
fascinating,
you
man.
know, and that's the thing is we do have fun conversations like this where we're talking the what ifs, where
Sure.
we start delving into these different things based on something that we just experienced. Um, and we start running through things, you know, and we're sitting here going, are we crazy? Like, are we all losing our minds here and we're the ones that don't know it, you know? Like, but uh, yeah, how do you quantify a feeling? How do you do that, you know? And I can tell you that I've had an experience where I can't, for a lack of better words, say that basically what happened is I got the feeling where the ranch is saying, hey, when you coming back, you know, and
Mhm.
I'm 50 miles away from the ranch, haven't been there for a week because I just needed the break, and I have something happen, and I'm like sitting there going, what the heck, you know? And that's the distinct feeling that I had was when you coming back. and it was just so crazy.
I'll tell you that you're the only person I've told this. Well, now everybody on the show. But when we went on the tour and we walked up, I had a moment where I kind of split off from the whole tour group while Thomas was like telling stories at the main gate.
Yeah.
And by that main gate there on the east side, there's that like creek that kind of runs through there and that cement barrier there. Yep. I kind of went to the edge of that cement barrier and I was looking out across the creek, and there was seriously like this impression that came into me that was like, it's about time. Like where have you been? Yeah. And it was very weird. I've only had that a few times, something similar to that, but Skinwalker Ranch is a strange place, Kaleb.
Yeah, it's very strange. And that's one of those things, like, we have so many experiences like this where we think we had something happen, or we are experiencing or feeling something. And this is something that it's, again, how do we quantify this? And a lot of the times the ranch just feels like a normal ranch. We got cows, and we're doing the water turns, we're watching we have this piece of property we got to take care of. And a lot of times it's just a tranquil, like little place. And it's, I don't know if when at the Phenomenon, during our panel, and I said, that's a place that I go to sometimes get away from things and just kind of relax and have that kind of peace, And Travis starts laughing to himself, says that's ironic as hell. I don't know if you guys heard that or not, because we've had so many crazy things happen out there that really do make you go, is it even safe to be out here?
Yeah.
And so for us to also say that's kind of a place where we go to kind of get away from people, it's just, it's funny,
Yeah. Well, it's definitely secure, and nobody can just come out there and bug you unless they have permission, right? So
yeah.
Unless it is the Skinwalker, I guess. But
yeah. And that's one of those things that we really try to take care of the ranch and respect it. But at the same time, we do have a lot of fun out there, and we're, we are growing that brotherhood, and and it's really cool being a part of it. And I definitely appreciate these different perspectives that we're having. And I've brought this up with Vinny today too. Is I'm the youngest one out there. I'm 32, and I think Tom's hitting his 40s, and everybody else is late 40s, early 50s in that age group. So some of our relationships, I've kind of been told that I'm kind of like the son, or the, they look out for me in different ways that, but we all have these different dynamics, like Tom, he's my brother. He's not just my brother-in-law, he's my brother. He's one of my absolute favorite people. And I love every minute that I get with them just to talk about stuff, and growing that relationship even more. So, and then, my relationship with Bryant and my relationship with Eric, like we all have these different dynamics, and then we get together as a group, and it just keeps growing. And it's some of our favorite memories and these different thought processes and stuff that we have are, cameras aren't rolling. It's just us out there being guys, and having our group and being a part and having experiences and stuff out there. And,
Yeah, that makes me think of something to pose a question to you. Have you guys experienced, there's so much of the phenomenon that seems to mess with your cognition or your ability to process, or like I said, find my equipment, or things turn up missing and stuff. Has there been anything with the phenomenon that's been like affected your dreams, or been experienced like I've had experiences where it's almost like a powerful download or a visionary type moment, or any shared dreams among the team where you've both dreamt the same thing? Is there anything like that you could speak to?
So I can speak to having strange dreams myself, specifically for whatever reason I felt they were more violent. I can say this because I again, these are some of that stuff got in, you get into some personal stuff with some of these things. But I can say this is, yes, there have been individuals on the team specifically, and other people that we have come to the ranch, or other individuals that are close to us who have had dreams that two people separated by separated by long distances and have never met each other had very similar dreams that were connected, and they found out within a day that these people were having this experience, and it was tied to the ranch. And I can say that people on the team themselves have had dreams and have had things in that realm happen that have shook them. And it's one of those things like, I can tell you at one point a couple years ago, everybody was willing to just walk off the ranch and never come back.
Really?
Yeah, because of some of these experiences that we're having. And we want to get these experiences out there, but we want to do it in a way where we're not going to really shake people, and it kind of comes back to, I think, what we talked about a little bit earlier in how do you disseminate some information out there, and how do you, because you have this information, and or say we gain this information and it could literally shake the world, if you will, and how would people respond to something like that? And you look at the saying that I'm thinking of right now is, people are a stupid mess, like they're wild, stupid animals when they're in a group, but a person is intelligent and can make good decisions when they're by themselves.
Yeah.
So when you have this group of people who get this new piece of information, and it's so outside their programming or their purview or whatever, or their paradigm, whatever word you want to use for it, how are they going to react as a group?
Yeah.
And what's that going to do? And, most people, I think, would be like, they won't process it. They'll be like, oh, that's interesting. And they just throw it out because that's like the mechanism of keeping them safe, if you will. But other people, they're going to lose their minds, And,
yeah.
And
I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, go for it.
I was just say, even when we were pulling up to the gate, there was a lady like on the back of the bus that started having like a panic attack and refused to get off the bus and different things. And everybody has that different reaction and response to it. And it's so fascinating if it's affecting like your dreams and going home and different. We're talking about something that goes beyond just like spaceships in the sky, like UFOs and flying saucers. We're talking about something that's connected with our sense of reality and human consciousness in some way.
And I've said this multiple times. This is how I explain it. I believe that I'm experiencing things on the ranch that are better explained using scientific methods, if you will. And then I have other experiences that are easier or more explainable using spiritual means, if you will. And so I'm one, science and religion go like this. They have their connections, and I should have looked it up, but there's a quote from an individual that basically says, science is explaining the world around us, and spirituality is explaining what's going on within us. And there's a meeting point, and I believe, and me personally, through some of the things that I've learned and from my experiences, that meeting points in our mind. And how are we in our mind is receiving these messages or creating these messages or having these things happen, and they're coming from without us on a different plane, if you will. And then within our body, we're manifesting that through chemical reactions and emotions, and we're having these experiences in a physical sense. And you start going down into some really, I think, fascinating rabbit holes with this, and it's like my story, how I'm connected to the ranch. It's I can't. Why am I the guy out there that got that opportunity when there were 50,000 other people living in the basin? And I never even heard of the ranch before 2017, really.
Right.
I was given the Skinwalker book by my mother-in-law like 2 months before, because at that point, Tom had been on the ranch and had been doing things for Brandon and really getting the ranch operational. And working with Jim Morse and Eric Bard and Brandon for almost over a year at that point. And I'd heard some stories here and there but I never really paid attention. I guess I was like, oh, that's neat. And then one thing caught my attention. I can't remember what the story was, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I started delving into it, and that's when I read I got halfway through the book, and I was like, oh, okay, this is kept my attention the first half, and then I kind of like died out, and I was like, okay. And then I got the opportunity to go out, and the first day I was on the ranch was Halloween 2017, and that's when and nothing happened. Of all the nights, you would think something would happen, it'd be Halloween, but I just and from there it was, Brandon asked if I'd want to be with help with the security at that point. I was like, yeah. And I started having experiences, and we had some really cool groups come out, and we were helping with the investigation, and it's just been full steam ahead at that point. But and then like the devil worshiper experience that we had, that kind of opened my eyes a little bit, and I was like, okay, I got to go get some more training. I got to go better myself, and I went into law enforcement, and that was 2018. So I've been doing law enforcement now for 3 years, and still doing full time at the ranch. And so it's been very taxing, and but I'm still having some crazy experiences, and it's really cool because things are happening outside the ranch, just as maybe not to the extent on the ranch that we're seeing, but things are happening off the ranch all over the basin. And it's interesting. Law enforcement hears things.
Yeah.
And people come to us and they're looking for answers. I've also heard, like I mentioned before, growing up in Southeast Idaho, the Shoshone-Bannock Reservation. I grew up right across the river in the Pingree area.
Yeah.
And a lot of these stories and a lot of that mythology.
You probably grew up hearing about the Skinwalker a little bit, didn't you? I did too.
Yeah.
I grew up in Southeast Idaho too. And I had an uncle and cousins that live in Vernal there in the Uinta Basin. So whenever they got around around the campfire, it was all Skinwalker and Bigfoot stories,
Yep.
And so it has been amazing, like the coincidences that line up. And we were talking about this before the show, even the fact that you and I are both here right now doing what we're doing. It's so random, like almost like you're fired out of a cannon into this position that you find yourself here, like, okay, I guess I'm like supposed to do this now, or I'm meant to be here at this place. How much of it do you think is tied into this phenomenon of conscious manifestation in the relationship with reality? Do you think that maybe when you get around the basin or the ranch, there's something amazing there that sort of enhances our own actual human abilities, and we don't quite understand that, and so it comes across strange to us? Or what do you think that might have to do with it?
Yes, as the short answer. And like I said, I started delving into different sources of knowledge or information, specifically after my dad passed away. And that's, and that's a lot of those things that Bob Proctor and this group talk about, is manifestation and things like that. And then you're also kind of delving into like that, like, is our life kind of predestined, if you will? And again, this is just the world to Kaleb, like, this is just, it's cool things to think about.
Sure.
I do think that we as a team, I think it is interesting, the level of individual that we've got out there, and the energy, especially these last couple of years. It's been really cool paying attention to that on my end, and I know some other guys on the team we talk about this too. This is something that we've talked about quite a bit, and we're seeing this different level of individual, and we try and bring other guests, and some guests, they're right there and we get it and they get it, and it's really cool seeing that. And then other guests, we immediately can feel it the moment they come on the ranch, where it's like, oh, this isn't gonna be good. Like, there's, and I guess, for a lack of a better word, I do believe that we have those two sources of light and darkness, if you will. And I feel like I've been able to, through my experiences and just the last 8 years, especially, where I've really been paying attention to this stuff, I'm seeing where I think it's really easy for me to see where people are at with that. And I can have conversations with certain individuals, and I can see where they're at. And I know I can't go into certain information with them. But others I can't.
Right.
Yeah, and then again, that goes into a point where it's difficult because you want to share certain things with somebody, or you like them, and you want to share that with them, but and you kind of go a little too far, and you can feel that kind of block come in, and you're like, I went too far. I know this is kind of sounds a little out there a little bit.
No, I hear you.
But it is one of those things that, yes, I guess, again, short answer, yes, I do believe that there is, for whatever reason, some kind of force that brought the team here, and we all have these different perspectives, and we're all at these different points, but we are all kind of on the same field, or on the same plane, if you will, and we're all able to experience things, and we're all having these crazy experiences, and that bond is forming, and we're trying to do it in such a way that people are able to believe, and we're trying to bring that information there. We're not gonna, I guess, in the realm that I've seen, especially kind of getting into this UFO realm, if you will, is I know of some people that are very they tell a story and it grows.
Yeah, they embellish it. Yeah.
They embellish it, and I have a hard time with that, because the things that I've experienced and the things that I've seen, I'm like, I don't need to embellish it because it's so freaking crazy. That's how could I make that up? Like, and I guess as someone like me, I grew up watching all the westerns. I grew up watching, Outlaw Josie Wells. I grew up watching The Searchers. John Wayne.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood, and growing up in the American West, you get this, that ideology and that kind of thrown in, and so I have a hard time when people don't live by their word,
Right.
And I'm thinking like the Josie Wells when he's talking with the Comanche chief, and he's like, I can live by words of iron,
Yeah.
We're men, and so when I see something, it is hard to talk about when I'm the only one, because I know what that can look like. And I don't want to bring anything that will, taint or distort what we're seeing, so it's hard for me to bring experiences. And even though I know we got to tell these things to each other as a team. And I know that I'm not the only one on the team that has some of those reservations. But then at the same time, it's cool because multiple people are seeing things. So like Travis and I seeing this floating rectangle 20 feet from us, I don't know, man.
It's a floating rectangle. What else are you gonna say?
Yeah, and it's like has this shimmering. It's this distinct color. I see this globe floating across the surface of this thing, and it hits me. That's my gun light reflecting back at me, and it's just nuts. And I'm so confident in telling that story and talking about that is because Travis was right there behind me, and both of us are going, oh shit. Like I can still remember what we were both yelling,
Yeah.
and going through that night, and we're having experiences like that, and there's other people seeing it. And so that's where it's so cool for us to be able to talk about it, and we don't have to embellish it again because it's there. And that's where I don't like talking negatively about people, but I've noticed that people in this realm do that because they want the attention.
Right.
And I guess I just don't vibe with that at all, because I'm like, dude, if you're actually seeing something, get it out there, and people can tell when you're telling the truth,
Right.
Like, and this is something from law enforcement, like, and anybody can do this. We all have this human connection, and when someone's throwing some bullshitium your way,
Right. Yeah, you can just sense it, and it almost seems like the ranch is able to amplify that as your radar, almost like your personal spidey sense or antenna gets amplified when people come around, and then it almost clues you in, And that's what's so crazy is this, like, we keep coming back to this idea of like the law of attraction or manifestation or the conscious connection. When you have like two of you. You've got you and Travis both seeing something. There's a triangulation going on. It's not just Kaleb seeing a rectangular form manifest into thin air and then move through the space or anything like that. It's you and Travis both able to look at each other. And then not only that, there's that connection that you guys have as a relationship at that deeper level of trust, where you guys are all together as a collaborative team and trust each other to be able to share this. Like, did you see that? Did I see that? Because you guys are all walking on this tightrope where it's expected that you're going to encounter these things. Like, people want you to encounter them, but every time that you do, it's immediately scrutinized from a scientific perspective or a spiritual perspective, and then from the television show angle and all of that. And so, and then if you do openly say, this is what I saw, then it's like, that's what everybody wants, but it also makes you look crazy. So how do you walk that rope, you know? And so that's why the idea that you guys are all this tight-knit team pulls all that together. I think like if that wasn't in place, you guys would have a really hard time even feeling confident to say what you saw. You know?
And I think that's another point there is we have the evidence. Like we do have evidence of things that we're catching on film. And we showed that on the television last year. I thought one of the coolest things that we have, I have it on the computer I'm talking, I have it on the computer that I'm talking to you on right now, the video of the UAP coming out of the clouds, flying through the clouds, doing this maneuver that none of our aircraft known performs and stays for like a second and then takes off. And we catch it from two camera angles, and they're able to triangulate how fast this thing is going. And it's like 1,500 miles per hour like that, you know, and we're showing this, we're physically showing this, and we're getting this information and we're showing it to people. And that's what's really cool. And I know that's one reason why we're able to talk about this stuff, because we're like, guys, you know, if you can come up with this, great, you know, but one of the things that I've been hearing Travis and Eric joke about is, if I was going to make something up, this is not it.
You know? Seems like you could come up with something like a little bit more like it, or like it's so random too, because you're talking about Skinwalker Ranch being this strange place where you're, you know, in from one episode to the next, you're filming things in the sky, you know, UAPs or UFOs in the sky, and then the next night you're out there and you've got a triangular thing. Can you describe that, or the rectangle? Can you describe like what you saw? Because I know in the editing, it's so like so chopped up in the editing process. So what did you see, Kaleb? Like, what the heck was that? You know?
So what happened was we were done filming probably an hour or two before. It had been a long day, and we were out. Brian actually went into Travis's trailer to talk with his kids on the phone. And Tom and Eric were on the other opposite side of me on this picnic bench. And I'm sitting there talking with them, and Travis is up actually grilling some hamburgers and stuff. And we're just kind of decompressing, and we're just kind of talking, you know, and I start hearing this snapping sound or like popping, or, you know, and it was almost, I described it as like a twig breaking, and I thought about it, and it was almost more like, and it hit me like one of my kids was playing with one like that plastic bubbles where you're
like bubble wrap.
Yeah, bubble wrap. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
And I was like, that's what it sounded like a little bit more, is like a real big one popping, and you get that real distinct snap. And then I started like the hairs on my neck started standing up, and it was that like my instinct of like someone's watching me right now, like they're sneaking up on me or something. And so I repositioned myself so I could like look off into the trees that are just west of where Travis's trailer are, where this other old beat up trailer sits that's from Bigelow's days. And I keep hearing this popping like every couple minutes, you know. And Travis and Eric and I actually remember Tom and Eric were kind of feeling a little off. I remember them kind of asking each other, "Hey, how are you feeling?" You know, they're like, And Eric, and then I really get a distinct pop, and I was like, okay, that's enough. And I stand up, and I start looking around, and Travis is like, "What's going on?" And I'm like, I keep hearing this popping sound or snapping. And he's like, what? And we all kind of quiet down, and I'm looking through the trees there, and there's a real big distinct one. And Travis is like, oh, what the heck is that? And I'm like, I don't know, let's go. And I've got a little bit of grief for this, because I pulled out my pistol and I turned my flashlight on. This thing lights up the whole mesa, and some of the other officers like, why'd you pull your gun out? And I'm like, oh, I felt like I was being watched, man. And I didn't know what the heck. I felt like something was sneaking up on me. I was just had that feeling.
Yeah.
And Travis gets in behind me and he puts his arm on my shoulder and he stacks up with me, and we go walking around the trailer there, and I'm just sweeping this whole area. And I remember exactly where we were standing there at that trailer. On the west side of it, there's a doorway sitting there, and we were right perpendicular with that. And I remember, I see this in my mind right now. I start swinging my gun over, and I'm looking down my sights, and Travis starts yelling and like freaking out a little bit. And I see it out of the corner of my eye, and I swing over and get on it. And yeah, there's this rectangular object sitting here. And this is where it went like slow-mo for me, is I'm swinging my pistol over, and I see this little on that rectangle that's like shimmering and like a goldish amber color, and this globe starts going like across my screen, like just right across the surface of this thing. And I'm going, what the heck is that? Like, I'm trying to process what I'm looking at, and it hits me. That's my gun light reflecting back at me
off of this rectangle.
Because like the closer I got it, it was like the whole area in this, between the canal and this trailer where Travis and I are standing, got brighter. And I was like, what the heck? And seeing that globe come across, it was my gun light reflecting. I could see our silhouettes there behind it too. It was so strange. Like, oh man, like,
wait, what? You could see almost like looking in a mirror in a way?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where
because we might have to talk about this off camera, because this gets into some weird esoteric stuff. But like, that's
and
very
it's
odd.
Like, and it had like that shimmering across the surface.
Yeah,
and like we've used the analogy. It was like it was cloaked like the Predator. It had that shimmering,
like light was being bent.
Yeah.
Like a warped reality was warped or open. Mm-hmm. Like, and when people describe seeing what they describe as like a portal, that what's interesting, I've had it related to me and another guest in the show that I've had, where maybe it's possible if it is a dimensional thing. And I know this is all theoretical, philosophical speculation, but if it is some sort of a dimensional window opening, it could literally just be that it's daylight on the other side. But if you're at night, it would appear like this gold shimmering,
what it looks like,
shining aura coming through and you'd be like, what is that? But it could just be like the fabric of reality opening, and you're seeing this sort of echo of yourselves on the other side. There are so many of these encounters where the phenomenon, or even people who've claimed abduction experiences, that while during the abduction they encounter like a doppelganger or a reflection entity of themselves. And so then again, it goes back to this idea of how much of it has to do with our own subconscious and our own mind interfacing with the phenomenon or what.
Yep. And and that was the thing, is like, I was on this thing for probably a couple seconds, and this whole time, I've nenever seen anything like this before. And I know Travis hasn't either. And that was one of the things, is we're sitting here trying to figure this out. And this is where like my brain is sitting here going like, what am I looking at? Is this a threat? I'm trying to figure this out. And then, this triangle, it's sitting there, and it just had this look like either it turned or it was like going in on itself.
Like an aperture closing or something.
Yeah. And so, but Travis and I both had the distinct feeling when it did that movement that, again, it was either turning or it was, I don't know. But this is where we both had the distinct feeling that it went across the canal. And so we both took off after this thing. And we both had the distinct thought that it went up the mesa. So is this something that was messing with us, or on some of these different levels, or was this actually like an object that just completely disappeared and like folded space
Could be
time
a wrinkle in time.
right?
Yeah.
But again, both Travis and I had this distinct feeling that an object went across the canal there, and we both take off after this thing. And I remember running across this across our little bridge there across the canal, and Travis like running and grabbing me and going, "Whoa, we don't know what's going out there." He kind of had a little bit of the more, let's slow down maybe and not run right into this thing, you know. And I was like, yeah, you're right. But it was, the hunter instinct kicks in and I'm going after this thing, or like the predator instinct kind of thing. Like that's my training, is I go after it,
Right.
I got to find out what this is. And I know Travis has that same thing, but he was able to reel back a little bit more. And we were freaking out, and Tom and Eric come running up, and actually Tom come running up and Eric went busting into the command center so he could get cameras and see if we could catch anything. And that's one of the things, is our cameras, we're always adding cameras and stuff because we have something happen in an area that we're not looking at with a camera, and it's frustrating,
Right.
But that whole experience with Travis, both of us, we still talk about that all the time, actually. And again, it's one of those experiences where I don't know if I would talk about that if I was by myself,
For sure.
unless it was like on a one-on-one, and but that's why I have such confidence, really, is because Travis was there and we both saw this thing, and it happened so fast. And and again, I wish I could download what I'm seeing in my brain right onto the screen so you guys could see what was going on,
Yeah, that's such a huge factor that just never makes it onto television, is how much happens within the cognition and within the perceptions of people, where the cameras just aren't pointed, and when the cameras aren't even there and the film crew's not even there, And I wanted to, you mentioned at the beginning when we got on here, you talked about how there was like satanic worshipers and stuff that got on, occult worshipers that got onto the ranch and did stuff when you first started out there. And I wanted to ask you, I know that they've found like the petroglyphs there. Has there been any other like carvings or any interesting like occult stuff that seems like more ancient, because I know through this whole region up there, and even down where I live here in southern Utah, there's stuff that looks like it's Aztec. There's stuff that has to do with the Masons, like square and compass symbols everywhere. There's just Jesse James symbols like carved over top of stuff to hide gold, train robbing gold that he hid all over. There's stuff all over the place. So is there anything else around the ranch there that you can talk about? Or?
So on the ranch, and I think this is out there, there is a Masonic symbol actually just north of where the command center sits, and it is a square and compass. And then other petroglyphs.
Is there any idea how old that is? I mean, could that be like a Mormon pioneer marking thing, or I mean, from the early days, pioneers.
So the best we can figure, and kind of the story that we've kind of, that makes the most sense, that we've been able to kind of find, is when the Buffalo Soldiers were out here at Fort Mighton and Fort Duchesne back in the 1800s, was that we found that there was a Masonic lodge amongst the officers who were over the Buffalo Soldiers. And so we're thinking, for whatever reason, they came out and they carved that there, which makes sense. Is if things have been going on here for as long as we think, and we know back to the earliest time that there's a settlement there with Homestead 3, which I think is like 1905 or 1915, somewhere in there was when the first homestead that's physically on the property that we own today is all the way on the west side of the ranch. And we haven't really had a lot of stuff there yet. But again, that's like the one place I've mentioned, like I hate going to Homestead 3 at night. Like I absolutely hate it because of I get that same feeling like I'm being watched. It's the one place that
think maybe the Buffalo Soldiers, like maybe before the homestead, there could have been like a lodge there and things done or something, or
Something, and we don't know. And that's the speculation is why is there a Masonic symbol carved right there, this square and compass, um, and and that's all at that point. It's all speculation because, like you hit on it, there's so much history, like American history, in the Wild West, right? Like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid were running around the Uinta Basin. This is where they hid.
right.
And there's a lot of stories of Spanish gold and Spanish mines up in the Uinta Mountains. And one of the stories is the Utes were enslaved by the Spanish mining this gold. And there's Spanish symbols all over the Uinta Mountains. And gold fever, people start killing each other. People go missing, all sorts of weird stuff.
Yeah.
When I was working in the oil field, there was an older gentleman that I was working with, and he was telling me that one of his friends, that's what they would do on their weekends is they'd go up and they'd be looking for Spanish gold.
Yeah.
And he's like, this guy went through Vietnam like 3 tours, isn't scared of anything, and went through Vietnam in heavy combat without a scratch. And the only places he's been shot is up in the Uinta Mountains looking for gold up there, because people start going crazy,
Yeah.
And then again, Southeast Idaho, there's stories up there. There's mountain man stories. There's the snake wars happened up there. All this history up in this area. So who knows what happened? Because how many small skirmishes happened where people were killed, but no one ever recorded it. It's
all over the place.
It's like look at all these big cities that have all this violence going on inside the cities, and no one ever hears about it.
Totally.
Yeah, and so you have supposedly this influx in the 1800s and prior of Spanish conquistadors, of American explorers, British explorers, French explorers, Russian explorers. You have all these guys coming in and inundating this area. You can't tell me that things didn't happen out here, that we'll never know.
Right.
There's and then like different ghost stories that we hear. What are they based in?
Right.
Is it just some guy was like, oh, this is a cool story, or did something actually happen like 100 years ago? And that's kind of been like a family thing that's been told, and then finally someone kind of broke the story to everybody else. I don't know. It's one of those cool things that you start getting into.
Yeah.
And
it's really interesting. Yeah. So there's a couple. Any other carvings? I'm just going through some of the questions here before we wrap up. Any other drawings or carvings or any objects? Because I know in like some of the paranormal stuff, there's like especially like a Bigfoot, like gifting or gift exchanges where things show up or seem to be left like a present, or anything creepy like that.
Nothing like that. Aside from like where we've placed something and then it moves. And when it comes to carvings on the ranch, we do have those petroglyphs, and that were shown with like Draco, and it does look like Draco and the Big Dipper, and has like the Masons. And then
right. He's like, Masons like to put their symbols everywhere. Ask me how I know. So NMUAP must know some or is a Mason.
Right. And then there's just a couple hundred or probably half a mile from where those petroglyphs are is where the Masonic symbol is. And to my knowledge, that's the only ones on the property. We haven't been able to really find anything else that's really distinct. I have found, I was on the south side of the ranch, and this is one of the things that we've talked about is we haven't done a lot of stuff on the south side because so much is happening over by Homestead 2 and the Triangle and along the mesa, right?
Yeah.
But part of my job is obviously going around the property and securing it, and again, it's a lot of ground to cover. And I have found like these little holes that I don't know how deep they are, and they're in the sand that you can't keep the sand without it collapsing in. It's very fine. It's very small particles. And I found these holes across the south end of the ranch, and they were lining up in a perfect line. And I took photos of them, and I've shown them to Eric, and he was like, if you find them again, let me know. And I found one, and I swear I marked it, and I went and grabbed Eric, and I came back and I couldn't find it again. And again, that's the thing, is that these little tiny holes again in this fine sand, and I don't know, was it important? I don't know, or was I just finding something from some critter? Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I've seen we had, it was kind of neat. We had a hive of bees that were underground, right? And there were all these little, where they would burrow up out of the ground, and they were these little circles. No, but they weren't anything like what I was finding, and it was just really interesting. But and then I found I found different animal carcasses, and we've had different things like that where they weren't there the day before, and things don't look right,
Right.
And this is years ago when I first was going out there. So I got some photographs of those, and who knows? Yeah, I'm all for it. Maybe it was there, but I know that I found something that was not there. I was on the patrol. I went through the area. It was not there, and then 2 days later, when I come back, it's there. So,
see, how do we know the cattle mutilation? Here's a fun thought.
Yeah.
Anybody who owns a dog or a cat, sometimes you turn around, you found like a dead mouse on your front porch, and you're like, oh. But from the animal's perspective, it's like a gift. It's like, hey, I brought you something. Like it was. So
that's an interesting. I see where you're going with that, and that's a pretty interesting. Oh, here's a gift for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we would see it as grotesque or something like that, but from its perspective, it's like, hey, here's something. I got one of your cows for you. No, I don't know. That's so interesting.
Oh yeah, and one of our things is like, sometimes I'm like, I look at some of our livestock out there, and I'm like, one of you guys just needs to get like torn apart like right now. So like,
yeah, definitely. Well, Kaleb, we could go on and on, and we talked for like a half hour before we even started the show, and I've got like a bunch of other questions. I know it's getting late in the evening and everything, but I would love to save them for maybe another episode and let you get back to your family and everything this evening. But man, I think kind of the theme of this show that's so cool that kind of emerged from it is just how this phenomenon and what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch, it seems like you and the guys that you're working with are the perfect team for the job. And it speaks volumes to the fact that like we've spoken to the historical history of this place, and everything that's gone on isn't always that bright. It isn't that great. There's been a lot of horrible, horrible things that have occurred in that basin and throughout that area in some of these regions. And now people like you and good guys like Eric and Dragon and Travis and everybody and Brandon, now it's like you guys move into the area, you secure it, and then your conscious attitude and approach and spiritual motivations and everything going in there, it's like healing. Like you guys are going in and healing and allowing, it's almost like therapy for the Skinwalker to have all you guys there or something to kind of heal it and let it fix itself. And also at the same time, there's sort of an exchange of understanding and learning and growing that we all get from it.
I appreciate that you bring that up because I do remember the first couple times, like the first year that I was out there, we didn't really notice a lot of wildlife, and there definitely was more this foreboding energy there, especially that first year. And I know through the process of not just a TV show, but with the investigation, I know that we have brought on, I can say that we've brought on some native medicine men and some very spiritual individuals in that realm, and they've done some things, and there's a lot more wildlife on the ranch now. And I know this sounds weird. Maybe we just didn't see him. I don't know, but the energy is completely different since the first time I was out there in 2017. But it's neat because we are having cool things happen, and it's not like we're not doing things that I would say are violating, like I've felt and seen before out there. And yeah, it is definitely a different energy from when I first started out there, and it is, I think, more positive. And so I appreciate that, and I see that with the team. We're trying to be honest. We're trying to get the information out to the fans, and I can't speak enough about the fans and the outpouring of support that we've got.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been really such a cool ride. Again, like being able to meet and talk with individuals such as yourself, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be able to share some of these experiences, and especially on like a show like this, and just get this information out there. And like my experience with the ranch, and specifically with, like, say, the Satan group that came out, and seeing that and feeling that same energy, is like I mentioned on some of these calls that I've gone to. That's not good stuff. That's not good stuff. That's not good energy. You start getting into really bad things. And I've just kind of felt like me going through some of these experiences, as maybe I can help somebody get a different perspective if they're going down a road like that, and be like, that's not the road you want to go down. There's much better. There is good out there. And maybe I can help people get in that direction. And, and so I've kind of gained that perspective, especially this last year. And that's something maybe the ranch can help, is, get somebody excited about something and start getting them into good energy, and get them into something that will help them, So
Yeah.
I think that Skinwalker Ranch in and of itself may be a bigger opportunity than what we're realizing.
Yeah, I think it transcends beyond what we can understand the purposes, because I can't think of a better place or an opportunity to take something like as creepy and horrifying as the legends of the Skinwalker that everybody grows up with. You grow shape-shifting curses and slavery in the past, and all this kind of crazy stuff, and UFOs and paranormal activity on the ranch, and cattle mutilations, and you're taking this totally horror story, and these topics have, up until just recently, always been approached with, let's go in and let's challenge it or aggravate it or take things in to try and get a response, and now this approach of understanding it through consciousness and through spiritualism and meditation and science is opening all these new doors and all these new people to realize, like, it isn't just some Halloween boogeyman under the bed. There's a relationship going on here with this spiritual reality, or something beyond our reality of understanding that we don't know. And I couldn't think of a better team of people to put right in the middle of that, to send that message.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you're hinting right there. I think we with some of the experiments, we are joking that we're kicking the hornet's nest or whatever, but I think our intention is really we're trying to find out what's going on, and we do have this relationship with the ranch. For lack of a better word, I do believe that we have some kind of spirit or intelligence, whatever you want to use, however you want to describe it, but I do think we have enough evidence to show that there's something out there, and we are trying to interact with it the best we can, and in a respectful way. But how do we know how to properly communicate with it? And I guess I'd rather be one of the ones trying to figure that out than giving it to somebody else that I don't think that doesn't have that respect, of trying to communicate with it.
Absolutely. And I think that has to do with, the owner, Brandon, and how smart of a man he is, who he's picked to represent him on the ranch and the show and everything like that. And it's been just a real pleasure for me to get to know all you guys, and get to meet you one at a time and stuff, and have you on the show, Kaleb, and stuff. And hopefully I'll be able to have you back.
I'd be happy to, and I'd be honored to. I'd love to be able to talk with you and get to know you again. So get to know you some more. So I'd be happy to. And I know we'll just have to get a good time and get it knocked out. So
I'm going to be coming up there a lot more. I've got different side projects going on and everything. So when I'm in town, I'll hit you up, and I need to get Travis and Eric and all those guys to come on the show too, and get their perspective and see what they think. Spread the word, So Kaleb, thanks so much for joining. I'll let you go to your family and everybody who joined us over here in the chat, and we'll see you guys on Carl Vibe in the next episode. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Carl.
Bye.